Let's go ahead and bring in our newly named CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, joining me now from Washington. Ed, congratulations. This is my first opportunity to ask you, with your longer title now, a question. Let me start off with what we heard there from the president-elect. It was a 5-point outline, essentially, of how it is that he plans to meet this goal, 100 million shots in 100 days. Take us through that.
It's a really ambitious one, and one that I think brought a lot of pause to people when he made it a few weeks ago, because there was real concern about the ongoing logistical challenges of getting those shots in the arm. And as you heard him say there today, and there's been some reporting throughout today, the Biden team is now incredibly frustrated and somewhat, caught off guard by the fact that the planning for not only the vaccine distribution, but just the ongoing federal response to the pandemic has been so shoddy and far less robust than they initially thought. This is the important part of why they wanted to get in and get started on transition briefings, for example, as soon as they could right after Election Day, and why that 20 or 12-day delay, however long it was, feels like ancient history now, was so critical, because it would have allowed them to get a better handle on this sooner. So look, last night, remember, he spoke, laid out a plan for $1.9 trillion in rescue attempts to get the country out from under this. And among the proposals he made was a $20 billion request to expand the national vaccination programs. And it would include things like encouraging the states to open up the vaccines to people beyond frontline workers and those above the age of 65, to try to accelerate it and say, look, if you get it out to more people, obviously you're helping the rest of the public get healthier sooner, or at least to be safeguarded against it. Wants to open up new federally backed vaccine centers across the country, mobile vaccination clinics that could get to harder to reach areas, rural communities, maybe some parts of big cities, encouraging the states and cities to find stadiums and other large public areas where they can not only be testing for COVID, but now also vaccinating against it. And he continued to rail on the fact that his team has been so concerned about what they've learned about the lack of work, in their view, so far to respond to this. And he says, quote, that stops when we're in office. Also notable, and we're going to have to hold them to this, Elaine, he says, we're going to be transparent about the decisions we're making and the progress we're making. And I think that sets him up for some really early potential issues should they not be meeting the mark, and should they be falling short of the 100 million vaccinations goal. But all of this, last night, today, some things he'll do tomorrow, announcing another cadre of science advisors, is designed to remind people that despite everything else that's going on in this country, or maybe just to sort of refocus attention on what is so apparent and urgent to so many Americans, and that is that this pandemic is raging on, sickening hundreds of thousands of people, and continues to leave the economy in tatters.
And Ed, I was struck at the beginning of his remarks, the very, very sober tone in which the president-elect said that we remain in a very dark winter, he called it. And he said things will get worse before they get better. And he seemed to suggest that there would not be any immediate exit out of this pandemic. And he seemed to ask for time in making sure those policies were implemented. But, at this point, so many Americans are absolutely fatigued emotionally, mentally, physically, not just with the election, but with the pandemic effects. What did you hear there with respect to sort of setting expectations for Americans in the months ahead?
Well, that's exactly what it is he's trying to get out ahead of his big start on Wednesday and say, look, based on what we've learned, it's going to take even longer than we initially anticipated. And if you read the fine print of the proposals they put out last night, $1.9 trillion, about a 19-page fact sheet that they shared. In there, he's calling for an extension of, for example, unemployment benefits until the end of the third quarter, the end of September. Extension of some of the other federal relief until then, which is a marker that, at least for now, his team believes it's going to take at least that long for people to be able to find meaningful work again, let alone the possibility that it's going to take at least that long to get enough Americans vaccinated to the point where, perhaps the masks can come off, or in some sort of normalcy, whatever that is now post-pandemic, will look like. And that is a longer runway than I think many people were anticipating even around Christmas time, but this is the result of the spike in infections that we've seen across the country after holiday travel, and despite the calls to socially distance and to take precautions. And I think it just really aggravates him and his team to the core that they have to keep trying to convince people to wear masks, even members of Congress, as he pointed out there, recounting the experience of some members in the midst of that Capitol siege who were in a room with Republicans who refused to wear them. But it's telling that he feels, you can say, wear it for your country, wear it for your family. It's just a sign of how difficult it's been to convince people that they need to do this, and it's something that he's going to continue to do. But we talked a little bit about this last night. The idea that he's taking on sort of an FDR style, straight, blunt talk, sharing dark yet important information about the reality of what's going on. I think for many Americans it's going to be a relief to have a president that does that. For others it's going to be a bit of a whiplash. And for yet others there's going to be a lot of doubt about whether he's going to be able to turn things around quickly. And I think by trying to set expectations and say it could take a while, he's trying to signal, look, the light isn't going to just flip on the 21st of January. It's going to take a little while. But you're also going to see him probably blaming the current administration, soon to be former administration, for creating and leaving him such a mess.
All right, Ed O'Keefe, CBS News senior White House correspondent and political correspondent. Ed, how's that feel?
Hearing you say it sounds pretty good, Elaine. And you're the first, you're the first to, so thank you.
I feel so honored to be the first to actually ask you a question with your new title there. You're definitely one of the best in the business, and so well deserved. Congratulations.
Thank you.